It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name is George Cooper and welcome to the show. Wow, I don't think anyone expected that, did they? The only thing that you can rely on this season with Fulham is their unpredictability. That's the only thing that is predictable about our team. It is brilliant. What an away win at St James's Park, which has been elusive over these last years. I think the last time we got a win in the Premier League at St James's was 2009. So, I mean, you have to really cast your mind back. And first half seemed to go exactly as everyone planned. You know, we did not look at the races whatsoever. We went 1-0 down thanks to that Murphy goal set up by a winger who bears a striking resemblance to Princess Diana. He was causing us all manner of issues, but we managed to nullify it. It was a game that was won in the midfield of the park, and second half, I mean, we'll come on to it, but wow. Raul Jiminez, Rodrigo Muniz. I'm edging closer to getting myself a Muniz tattoo every week that goes by. Just what a moment. I was so jealous not to have been there. It looked like one of the great kind of results that we'll look back on this season with joy. And with me to revel in all of the goings on of Saturday is making his pod debut as well, Jordan Wilson-Pearce. How are we doing? JWP.
Thank you very much. Yeah, honoured to be on. I've worked with you guys over the last couple of years now, behind the scenes, doing all your merchandise, but never made my debut. So delighted to be on, very honoured, and look forward to it.
Yeah, you may not have heard his voice so far, but you would definitely have seen his creative work. So Jordan is actually, and his partner Zoe, are also the creative minds behind the Fulhamish logo and all of our graphics that we do, everything that you see on social media. Jordan is the creative force behind that. So it's great to have you in front of the mic. It's been a long time coming. So welcome to the panel.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
I'm also joined by Dan Cook, who is up in Newcastle on Saturday. How are you feeling, mate? You got a lovely grin going on there.
I don't think it's gone since that second goal. I can't stop smiling. I'm so happy.
Oh, bask in it. What a win. And the one and only Farrell Monk. How are we doing, sir?
Very good, thank you. We've got the creativity of Jordan, and now you've got the accountant, me, to balance it out a little bit. Yeah. We're getting everyone from the back office in. We're getting payroll in. We're going to get the cleaners in from the office.
HR.
Get them all on the podcast. Yeah.
You got some 3-word reviews for us, have you, Faz?
I do. Life is about choices, and I've decided to choose to go to Instagram because I'm choosing not to give Elon Musk any sort of clicks at the moment. So, firstly, I just really like this one from Ted Mansour. More like Pooh Castle, which that's a submission from his 7-year-old. I just would like that to put that one in there straight from the off. We got Bram Huben 99s with second half tune around. Connor Clapsharp tunes them over, and finally someone called Zoe Barrett with 3 points away.
Hey, nice one.
Who's that then?
For context, this is Zoe is Jordan's life and creative partner, so it's nice for her to chip in. She must have known that you were on today. More like Pooh Castle is one of the greatest 3-word reviews I think we've ever had on this pod.
So good.
I love it.
It's going to be very hard not to name the pod that, to be perfectly honest.
I know. Well, it is going to be my choice at the end. Ted, you need to let us know what your child is called so we can credit them at some point.
Yeah. I saw that get posted immediately, and I think within a quick refresh of the page, it already had about 15-20 likes. So I knew it was going to be a strong one.
It sort of partners up nicely with Brent Fart.
Let's try and drag our minds out the gutter for a moment. Dan, you were up in the northeast. I was so close to booking the train for this one. I lived in Newcastle for 3 years. I think it's a fantastic city, fabulous place to watch football, proper football fans, incredible atmosphere. And I was looking at the photo. I texted you before the game, Dan. I was like, enjoy Newcastle this weekend. It looked like glorious weather as well, crisp sunshine, blue skies. And you texted me and you said, I've never been more confident of a Newcastle win, but we'll try and enjoy ourselves. But I think it's safe to say that you did enjoy yourself, Dan. How was it? Just talk me through the day quickly, the atmosphere, just as a general away day.
It was cracking. It was, it's just, I'm with you. Newcastle as a place, fantastic, great city. The ground, I think, is probably outside of obviously Craven Cottage, my favourite ground in football. I love St James's. Obviously, the view from the away end is a bit silly, but just in general, it's a spectacular place to be inside and watching football. You've got the view out across the city centre. As you said, the weather was brilliant. It's a very special place, and my lack of confidence going into the game sort of stems from the fact that it's such a special ground with such a special atmosphere. And I wasn't sure how Fulham would deal with that. And in the past, we haven't dealt with it. But my God, we stood up to the challenge yesterday. That was wonderful. And it was just, brilliant. Got into Newcastle about 12:30, went to a sports bar, watched Nottingham Forest inexplicably put 7 past Brighton, was pretty excited, got in early to get up the steps and get a drink, was absolutely blowing for about 5 minutes as everyone else was. You do those steps and had a little Guinness and then walked out. And if anyone who's done it, when you walk out into the stands in that away end, it's sort of like that light at the end of the tunnel. It's like the glare comes out as you hit the sunlight and you see Newcastle, and it just washes over you. It's beautiful. And then from there, it's all a bit of a blur. I'll be honest with you. It sort of, that game went by in both sort of, somehow it went by in 5 minutes and also felt like it took about 3 hours. And a real roller coaster of emotions. And I'm still quite grossly wearing the same T-shirt I was wearing yesterday because I don't want to take it off.
It is just an incredible place to watch football. And the stadium is right in the heart of the city. And in most sort of big northern cities, you've got the ground, which is sort of on the outskirts, I guess traditionally where the land would be slightly cheaper. Whereas in Newcastle, it's like the sort of Mecca, like in the middle, right in the beating heart of the city. And it's just, it's really, really good fun. I think one of the best away days I ever did back in the Championship when we won 3-1, Sessegnon got 2 goals. It's just really brilliant. And Dan, we were shared to quite the sight after, I want to guess it was probably after the 3rd goal went in. You with your shirt off, waving it around your head. I guess was that on the final whistle, or was that after Muniz goal? Because it's nothing screams pure elation and joy than a fully grown man who's whipped his shirt off in celebration.
There is a story. There is a story behind it. It wasn't full time. It was at the final whistle, and I went there with my partner Ellie and a couple of my really good friends, and I felt really I had no confidence going into this game. And I turned to my mate Josh and I said, if we win, I will take my top off, because it feels appropriate in Newcastle. I feel like that is their trademark is the larger fan like myself, topless in 2-degree weather. And as the full-time whistle was approaching, Ellie was stood next to me and she just started whispering in my ear, please don't take your top off. Please don't do it. To which I reminded her I shook on it. And as Chris Kavanagh blew the final whistle, it all came off. It was above my head for everyone to see. And I regret nothing.
Nor should you
shook on it and then you shook your belly.
Yes. There was a lot of shaking going on. There was a lot of body parts moving.
I'd love to see it. It's just pure joy. And Jordan, it was to use the classic football cliche of a game of 2 halves, I think certainly rings true for this one, because as we came out at the first half, we were second best in every conceivable aspect. I think it was a tale as old a time that we've seen from this Fulham side, that we were good in possession. We were playing some really nice football, but just our end product was lacking. What do you think was the main difference between first half and second half that you saw when watching the game that ultimately led to our win?
Of course. I mean, let's start just before when the lineup came out. I mean, listening to, I think, Yaz and Elizabeth on, last 2 pods, they had some sort of pessimism around Smith Rowe and his performances of late. And, he started last week for us, and it came a bit true. He was a bit quiet. So when I saw him in the lineup again, and I mean, let's go without saying, I love him to bits. I think he's a fantastic player, but I did think this was a role I thought Kearney could could start just to control that game. I think we all knew it was going to be a little bit chaotic from the start, and we were going to be under a lot of bombardment. So maybe that's where I would have thought Marco's, mine would have been, or even just Andreas, to just sort of a bit more a threat going forward. But when we came out, it was a very stressful first 5 minutes, especially. Thankfully, my stream was playing up when I was watching it, so I was missing out on it a little bit. So, I could focus on that rather than watching us. But yeah, Tonali was just absolutely dominant, a complete powerhouse in the front with, Joe Linton and Jiminez. We knew we were going to be up to a lot of abuse throughout the first half, and they did. And I think, a good bollocking from Marco Silva at half-time was well needed. And I think he did confirm that's what happened at half-time. There was a lot of players that probably weren't doing the role that they should be doing. And I think a good talking to sort of set them on the right track. But, watching that first half, typically Fulham, as I've seen them throughout, mainly this season, we're playing such a high line. And, you're seeing and Andersen, Diop when he's been playing, and Bassi, right on the halfway line for most of that half when we're in possession going forward. But there was quite a bit of a stretch. We were sitting quite deep defensively, but our midfield were quite high, and there was this huge gap. So you were seeing these long ball passes coming over our midfield, and they were having a lot of time and pleasure on the ball there. So yeah, it caused a lot of disruption, but that sort of narrowed into the second half. We were a bit more tight, and we were first to every ball, and we were right on their tails throughout the game. So, yeah, it was a good second half performance, but very scary first half.
I do think that the first half, Jordan said it right towards the end there, like it was just, the second half was just a little bit different. I felt like I didn't actually feel we were that far away from being on top in that game. There was a lot of nice stuff in the first half, and this has been the problem with Fulham. Lots of nice stuff. End product not quite there, but it just felt like all it needed. I didn't think we needed to make any changes at halftime. It didn't need a new player. It just needed a better final ball, or not even just a better final ball, a better penultimate ball at times, just to turn those screws in attack, and then the other way going in defence, just slightly better positioning or a slightly firmer challenge, or getting players around the ball so we win that second ball. And I think that's all that changed, was just a slight shift of getting 1 or 2% better at certain things that made that second half so good. I thought we were nearly there in the first half, and it was such a shame to have conceded when we did, because it felt like we were getting a foothold. The first 5 minutes were terrifying. A couple of shots go off, we're sat deep, you worry what's going to happen across the whole game. But we really started to get a grip on that game in that first half. So to concede when we did felt like a bit of a gut punch, and so full credit for changing that off after half time.
The opening spell was that Tonali volley that hit the crossbar. That would have been one of the goals that we would have been shown on repeat for decades.
Goal of the decade.
It would have been. It was one. I feel almost bad saying this, obviously, as a Fulham fan on a Fulham podcast, but I kind of would have rather that one went in, at least, because then at least we could have been part of this sort of moment. It was such a good effort, and I think Tonali largely was nullified by Sander Berger especially in the second half, his threat, and obviously you know what he can do supplying the likes of Isak, and I thought he largely was contained after having that really, really lively opening spell. Newcastle obviously did get the goal. It's just before half time. I believe it was on the 39th minute or so. Faz, Timothy Castagna was dispossessed by the People's Princess, who then proceeded to bomb it down. He caused us a lot of issues. He looks so dangerous. I love Anthony Gordon. In case you didn't make the link, I think that with his new haircut, he looks a lot like Princess Diana. Do we agree? Or is that just... He looks like Princess Diana. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah,
he does. He does. Not from the side, though.
So I think Castagna arguably could do better, but he's so far out when he does these positions. He's basically on the halfway line. So I think Anthony Gordon has to be given credit here. He does really well to get that ball in. Deflected cross off, I believe, Bassi, which then finds the path of Murphy. It was one of those where, obviously the finger will get pointed at Timothy Castagna, but I think collectively as a defensive unit, I think every person who plays a part in that could do slightly better. And effectively, Farrell, I feel like we were just caught napping a bit.
I think there's a few facets to it. I think prior to that, Castagna was having a really tough time up against Anthony Gordon, and I don't think that's necessarily solely Castagna's fault. We were exposed a little bit by Newcastle quite a lot, and I think that was just the nature of the team at the moment. But it was just annoying that it was just really clever from Gordon to read the bounce a bit better and blow past Castagna like a candle in the wind, basically, and was able to sort of get fired down. It's such a shame that the deflection came off Bassi, because I thought Bassi was incredible the first half.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought he was indicative of everything good about Fulham, like really strong on the tackle, really positive, and playing some really nice passes. The deflection was just, he got into the right position. He's obviously running back to goal, and it's just a shame it fell nicely to Jacob Murphy. And it came at a bad time. As Dan was saying, we were getting into that ascendancy, but we were starting to get a bit of control. But yeah, like Newcastle had their tails up after that, and we really struggled to get out of it as well. And I felt like every time we were getting the ball forward into nice positions, we were doing what we do normally, which was getting it into good spaces, getting their defense back, and then playing it out wide straight away. And I felt that we were doing that normal thing of just firing a crossfield ball into the box, which was quite easily headed out by Dan Burn. You've got to do really, really well to get a deep cross over Dan Burn at the best of times, and it just kept on getting cut out by him every single time. And I think, we'll talk more about the second half a bit more, but I think where we controlled the game more and more was actually moving Iwobi more inside to pick the ball up in those gaps in between defence and midfield, and actually influence the play closer to the box, as opposed to just doing it from the wide positions. But yeah, back to the goal itself. I think it just came at that not great time, but was probably the worst point of the whole game. It got better and better from there, really.
It did indeed.
I think the issue that we had yesterday in particular, and we will have whenever we face an electric left winger, is that our left-hand side in defence is blessed with exceptional physicality, both in terms of strength and pace, and our right-hand side is not. And the problem, it's not necessarily a massive problem if Anthony Gordon gets the better of Timothy Castagna, but it is because the follow-up to that is Joachim Andersen, and that foot race is so unfair and so easy for him that there's not much Joachim Andersen can do in that one-on-one situation. There's a lot of just like hope that you can push him into a non-dangerous area, or he gets his execution wrong of that final ball. And that was the problem. And we did manage to fix it in the second half, but we've got to work out how to deal with that, because Timmy hasn't been massively at it. And I wonder, and it has been suggested, that the drop-off in Andersen's form sort of does also coincide with Kenny Tete coming out of this team due to injury. But also the inverse is true. Castagna was better last season when he had a bit more of a physically capable right-sided centre-back supporting him. So we've got just a little bit of something that we need to work out what we do here. And is it possibly, and I think it did happen in the second half, that you drag someone like Sander Berge just a little bit wider to support when you've got a player as good and as quick and as technically gifted as Gordon running at your fullback? You just need someone else helping out. And we found the solution, but we've got to be careful against other teams, because there are lots of very gifted wingers in this league, and you've got to be careful. You've got to deal with it.
And if you think back to one particular game, whereas one of the few games where that was exposed quite a lot was against Arsenal, and how they utilised that. They sort of focused on that differently by utilising Odegaard behind, that day was Adama Traore, and they could draw Timothy Castagna out because Castagna was going towards Odegaard, and then that exposed Joachim Andersen behind him. I think it was Andersen that day was behind him, but it was whoever was on that side was then they had Trossard or Saka going in behind that in that way to try and sort of pull our centre backs out. But yeah, so maybe, Eddie Howe and their tactical team has sort of pinpointed that as a possible area of weakness. But it's only happened a couple of times this year. So, I think we're doing really, really well anyway.
I mean, it's kind of ironic, isn't it, that we're struggling with physicality and pace down the right-hand side, but we've got Adama Traore down the right-hand side, who's probably one of the most physical and fastest players in the Premier League. But yeah, I mean, his defensive work rate and ability really isn't enough to cover Castagna. There isn't really a backup at the moment for him there. I mean, when we've played Chelsea and around that era when Berger was injured, we were going with that back five, and it allowed those two to get right high up, and then we'd play the three centre backs. I mean, could that be a solution if we're getting caught out? Because it sort of seemed to work there. But I mean, yeah, I think also one of the main concerns earlier in that first half for all of us is Andersen and Robinson picked up yellow cards quite early on, and you don't want to then be going into other challenges and risking it. And then Lukic with this, suspension overhead, it's kind of like he was on a yellow card for him. I don't think we need him out this squad or acting like Paulinho of past. But I think everyone was a bit too tentative in that first half, and I think that's where that sort of goal came from. And Castagna just coming right onto, Gordon's backside when it was such a simple bounce over the head and turn. And yeah, Dan's right. That foot race it was never going to happen.
Yeah. You mentioned Chris Kavanagh there, our old friend. I listened to yours and Jack's quick take, Dan. Thoroughly enjoyable, first and foremost, but you both had criticism for Kavanagh, and I, like every single Fulham fan, when I saw that it was Kavanagh refereeing, we were like, oh, for God's sake, here we go. Mm-hmm. What's he going to do this time? And you had pretty heavy criticism. You said that you thought that he was too trigger happy with his yellow cards, booking tackles that weren't yellow card worthy, but then letting other challenges that were yellow card worthy slide. I think that I agreed with a lot of what you said, but the one thing that I think Kavanagh did do well yesterday, and I hasten to add, I say this through gritted teeth because I cannot stand the man. I think that his lenience and letting the game play on yesterday contributed it to it being such an entertaining game. That is the one thing that I think he did well. He let play go every opportunity that I think that within reason that he could. And I think it was a brilliant game yesterday. I think even for the neutral watching, no one would argue the fact that it was end to end. Newcastle hit the bar twice, and you were watching with bated breath about the whole fixture, thinking you weren't sure what the score was going to be. But yeah, what were the main issues that you had of Kavanagh's refereeing input, Dan? Because I know we all have an issue with Kavanagh, but I think you in particular particularly despise the guy.
Yeah, I just thought it was. I don't even think it necessarily, ultimately, clearly, negatively impacted Fulham more than it did Newcastle. I just thought he got a lot wrong. There was a number of occasions when I thought Newcastle should have had a free kick and he just waved it away. And I just think he's not very good. And it was very frustrating the first half. That was what was really getting me in that first half, was especially Joe Linton, a player with a reputation for playing on the edge, went into a couple of challenges that on their own I thought were yellow card worthy. He then committed them again, and Kavanagh kept going, oh, you've got one more. And more than once he told him he's got one more until he books him. And he eventually did. But there was a moment when I think it was the Joachim Andersen booking, and he made an incredibly valid point. Andersen gets booked for a foul on the edge of our area. And I think it was either 2 minutes before or 2 minutes after, something nearly identical happens down the other end of the pitch, and Newcastle get away with it. And it's that inconsistency where I think Marco was losing his mind in that first half. And I think in the second half, we actually probably did get the rub of the green. But that's not what I want to see. I almost like, obviously it's great seeing us benefit from what I thought were poor refereeing decisions, but I'd rather that you didn't have any of that. Yeah. It was incredibly frustrating to see. And we benefit from it. I think our second goal comes from Anthony Gordon seemingly being clearly, I only saw it from the away end, I'm a long way away. It looked like Andreas Pereira kicked Anthony Gordon, and everyone expected a free kick to be given, and it wasn't. But you're not wrong, Coops, that either leniency or incompetence led to an incredibly fast, exciting game of football. I was really enjoying watching it. Both teams just going at 100%, flying into tackles, countering at pace. It was a great watch, and I'm sure anyone who managed
Fulham
to
should have
watch
been
it
well
enjoyed
rested after that Manchester United game, basically, where they did
Yeah.
absolutely the most pedestrian game of football I've seen in ages. Dan,
the
are
duality
you
of Fulham.
specifically? Yeah, are you specifically talking about like Joe Linton and sort of like not getting yellow cards and whatnot? Because this is something I've noticed recently, and I've had my mind put at ease by it, and it's not something that a lot of people know about, that I'm not sure you guys do, but like quite a lot of times yesterday, specifically Joe Linton and a few other Newcastle players were causing fouls, but the ref played on what would have been yellow cards. But apparently there's a new directive from the PGMOL, basically saying if there's a foul and it's a yellow card offence, but the advantage is played and game and the play moves on, it's not an automatic booking. The referee doesn't necessarily have to come back and book him anymore, which I'm not entirely sure I agree with. Which is why Joe Linton's, it was quite a long time till he actually got a yellow card. Yeah, but I only found this out because I was watching an Ange Postecoglou interview of all things, and he actually mentioned it. But it's not something that's been advertised about, and you've seen it quite a lot of times where we've gone, oh, they should bring that back for the booking, and then they've just seemed to get away with it, like really, like quite cynical, reckless challenges that players seem to get away with it. But I don't know if the managers even clock it as well, because they seem to be apoplectic about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a new change into the rule, because I remember that Ange press conference. He's like, no, I think you're fine because we've been stung by it recently, and they really went in. But,
yeah, I do think as well, Coops, that my frustration with it stems from the fact that I know what to expect from this Newcastle team. They are not a team, I'll be honest, I massively enjoy watching, because they have an excess of physicality, and it's clear that Eddie Howe sends them out with a directive of bully your way into winning this game. And this is why I think they're a cracking team against big sides. You know, they cause Liverpool, Arsenal, City problems because they get right up in your face and they will do whatever they can, play on the edge until they get a yellow card, and then they'll step off you. So they take it in turns, and that midfield trio especially, they go one for one. You know, as soon as Joe Linton get booked, right, it's Bruno's turn to get stuck in. And I think the only way you cut that out is by booking them early doors. So I was getting very frustrated watching Joe Linton get away with stuff, because it meant he could keep doing it. It meant he could keep on stifling our attacks. He could keep on putting in heavy challenges until he got booked. And that was where my frustration came from, because I think that does negatively impact Fulham across the wider game quite significantly.
And when you think about it, it actually played into Fulham's hand after all, because when we were in the ascendancy, was because they were getting a bit overzealous in terms of trying to win the ball higher up the pitch, and either we were able to play out the press, or they were trying to sort of be very much more aggressive attacking wise, and we were winning the ball in the best areas and doing what Fulham, this Marco Silva Fulham team, are doing really well this season, is beating teams on the transition. And you know, you can see it right the way through the team. 33-year-old Raul Jiminez kicked off the equaliser goal by anticipating, intercepting it, and starting off a break, and finished it at the end. And I think, you know, although Newcastle caused a lot of the big teams problems, it played right into our hands.
No, I agree, Faz. I agree. Do you think we should maybe come on to Raul's goal, the equaliser? Lovely team move. Jordan, obviously, Raul was the person who started the move off, came to Adama, pinged it across. I believe Robinson played it back first time, deflected finish at the end, but doesn't matter. I'm sure there were amazing scenes in that away end. And do you think that Raul has now made amends for the red card last season, where he put his ass through Longstaff's face just in the middle of his purple patch?
Yeah, oddest red card I think Fulham players had in a long time. But no, totally. He picks it up way deep into our own half and gets the ball rolling forward. And I think, yeah, you mentioned 33 years old. I know it's still young, but as a football player, just to have that complete powerhouse of an engine, just to keep on striving forward and getting forward. And when that ball went out right, I was screaming at the TV, switch it, and it did, and it found Robinson beautifully. But I think we all just sort of swallowed and took a deep breath, because we know how fantastic. I mean, he's got a huge amount of assists this year, Robinson, but we know his first-time balls can be a little bit wayward. So when that just came off beautifully, straight into the feet of Farrell, I mean, yeah, it was beautifully put away. And no, I think he's matured into this fantastic player for us. You know, when he started out, we were a bit nervous. We were switching between him and Muniz, and we couldn't really find our place. But you know, I think he's well deserved of a start now. And sort of my hopes for the January transfer window, and we need a striker, I think, are sort of dimming a little bit. I think, you know, between them, they both add up to just this glorious one perfect striker that in both of them. But yeah, thoroughly made up for last year.
If you could somehow combine the two attributes, you'd have like an absolute world beater.
They both come on with, you know, we see Muniz come on, and early on in the season he just runs around like a little donkey trying to, you know, throw himself and his weight around the pitch, and you know, then he does find form and he does come good. But you know, we do find around about that 70th minute where Marco switches him over, they come on with just this burst of energy, and it's really hard to game manage really at that point. And you know, we wouldn't be having this conversation if Muniz hadn't put the ball away against Chelsea, hadn't put the ball away against Newcastle, and you know, he just comes clutch exactly when we need him to, you know, to come up, you know, come clutch for us. But yeah, I think together themselves, you could see Raul so frustrated coming off. You know, he wasn't happy about it, but we all knew, yes, Muniz is coming on. That means a late winner, and I guess he must believe that in himself. But I know he could probably get more out of his tank. But at that point, I think I was going, "That's Raul done. I can't see much more magic happening. Get Muniz on." So you know, perfect switch from Marco as always.
It was an inspired double substitution from Marco, Andreas Pereira and Muniz coming on, and then the pair combined fabulously to get the winner. It was a very, very clever free kick move, one that I imagine has been rehearsed on the training grounds many a time. There was a block formed. I can't remember who it was, which particular...
Castagna.
Yeah, Castagna blocked off Newcastle centre pairing and allowed that space for Muniz to come in and get the slightest of touches. I mean, Dan, talk me through it all. Being in that away end, the goal, the celebrations, the elation, the surprise. What was it like?
I think it says a lot about how much I know about football, because as Andreas Pereira was shaping up to take that, I turned to pretty much everyone in my row just because I think I wanted to put this thought out there. But I was certain what was going to happen was he was going to drift it towards the far post and no one was going to get a touch on it. It was going to drop in the far corner. And I think that's probably actually what Newcastle was setting up for, which what makes the free kick so smart is it's very evident there in that position. Most teams aim for that back post. So to set up a block and go near post is very intelligent, and I don't think Newcastle are expecting it. The touch from Rodrigo Muniz to put that in needs an immense amount of credit. I didn't even know if he got a touch on it from the away end. I sort of just ended up getting elbowed in the face and lifting my partner up in the air and hugging everyone that I could see. But when you watch
Whipping
it back,
your shirt off.
Whipping my shirt off. He sort of cushions it. But I think if he doesn't get a touch on it, it might maybe sort of hit the post potentially. And it's such a neat little deft touch. It's genius. I also, to counter my me being completely wrong about where that free kick was going to go, I did say when Rodrigo Muniz came on, he looked incredible in that purple kit. I don't think anyone has worn purple as well as he did, and so I was so confident that he was going to score because I could just see it, the iconic vision of this man in full purple bagging at St James's Park, and he did, and the scenes were incredible. It was shock because you're so far away. Not only are you up in the gods, it was down the other side of the ground, and so the ball comes in. and you don't really see it. It goes through a couple of bodies, and you could just see the net start to move, and that's when it all kicks in. That's when the chaos erupts, and yeah, special moment. And it feels like we're banking these. It feels like we're collecting these special moments this season. It's a lovely, lovely moment, and a nice moment for Andreas Pereira, I think, who still unfairly is getting chastised by some Fulham fans. I'm not his biggest fan in terms of his actual output, in terms of quality, but he is never down tools at Fulham. He is always given 100%. He is still as 100% committed. Now that he's been relegated to the bench for these past 2 games, he's still coming on and trying to make things happen. And if things don't come off, fine, you can get frustrated at it. But it's lovely that he gets his moment as still our best set piece taker, the right person to have standing over that free kick. I'm happy for him because he's got a little bit of that Mr. Fulham about him. You know, 3 years he's been in now, and he is so committed to this club. And I'm happy that that maybe, you know, next weekend, maybe not, sorry, 2 weekends time when we play Forest and he comes on the pitch, I hope that the idiots behind me at H5 stop booing him, because I'm actually fed up of it.
That's ridiculous. If booing your own player when they haven't done anything wrong. I mean, but also yeah.
I will. He is. I hear what you're saying then, but I do think that AP is still giving off the vibe of boyfriend trying to dig himself out of the doghouse, and he's doing it. He's doing it in the way that he best can, in putting in shifts, in trying his hardest, in, you know, doing every, you know, kissing the badge at the end of the crowds.
Does it matter if you've hoovered the house for bad reasons? You know, you've still cleaned up. You know, you've still bought flowers, and they might be sorry flowers, but they are still flowers at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm willing to let him out of the spare room and back in the marital suite. Yeah, especially if he can keep putting in naughty little crosses like that for Muniz to get on the end of. Sorry, Faz, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, sorry, it was just literally like one following on from that about the set pieces. I think, so I'm just looking at, we had like 7 corners yesterday, and I think we created 4 chances from them, including the goal. There was a couple of Raul headers as well. And I feel like after last year when we couldn't stop scoring from set pieces, this year it's been a bit of a weird patch, but suddenly we feel fine. Suddenly we feel like we're getting some joy with it. And Raul got a header a few weeks ago, a goal as well. And I think Lukic has been started taking them, and it shows his resurgence isn't just in the midfield; it's from the corners as well. And that's, you know, it's great that we're able to sort of like, we've had a bit of problems with this area, we can now fix them as well. But yeah, like just going back to Pereira as well, like, you know, I've not been his biggest fan, but he's now been at the club for 2.5 years and played pretty much 95% of those games from the start, in the period that Fulham have had one of their most successful periods in the history ever. And he's contributed to that without a shadow of a doubt. And I really don't want him to end up leaving on a sour note. That's all. You know, he's been great for us. He's loads of memorable moments. And I don't want any player to leave on a sour note, but booing him is the right way to go about it, that's for sure.
I mean, Faz, I think you're 100% right. I mean, looking at it myself, when I, you know, at the cottage, when I do see these wayward passes just get, you know, intercepted, when I do see sort of, you know, this turn on the spot and a slip, and it is frustrating. They were occurring quite a lot, but he is involved in all these games that we are winning, and he is that attacking force that, you know, maybe Smith Rowe hasn't got for us at the moment. I mean, best set piece taker for us is a little. I find his corners the most frustrating thing. Everything else, fine, you know, whatever. But a lot of the corners this year, I've seen Pereira not even make it past the first man, and you know that's where a lot of the boos are getting and the frustrations coming from. Admittedly, it has all happened after that, you know, supposed alleged interview he had with, was it the Brazilian press or something? But I mean,
it wasn't alleged.
Well, you know, yeah, it happened. Yeah, fine, you know. But it's more the fact, actions speak louder than words, and he's come on, he's stood there on the touchline warming up whilst everyone's booing him. Obviously taking that all in, and he's coming on and he is putting in a complete shift. And I'd like to see him start next week. I think Smith Rowe played well, but I just think from the get go we need something. We need something there.
Yeah, he's popping up as well. He's. I know there's been frustration at his output and misplaced passes, but he, as we saw on Saturday, he can put in a ball that Muniz will get on the end of. And yeah, to your point, Dan, I think Rodrigo Muniz may be the only man to pull off purple in that way since maybe Prince.
Yeah. Has to be.
I can't think of anyone
else. Rodrigo is it's now Rodrigo's purple rain then.
Yeah. Or as Sammy James was up in the 3-word reviews, Rodrigo's purple snatch, which was left to be interpreted in many ways. A few sort of, few people on social media clutching
really
their pearls.
Got to get that checked out.
Yeah.
I hope it got a bruising from that.
Yeah, you need some arnica cream or something.
He told everyone to get their minds out of the gutter, and it was a play on snatching the win, I think, and purple patch. But I mean, it was very, very fruity 3-word review from one Samuel James there.
The other thing that I loved about it and makes this one of my favourite Fulham teams of all time is there's such a beautiful camaraderie and togetherness within this team. And Rodrigo Muniz did a little post-match interview that some people might have seen where during that double substitution, he turned to Andreas Pereira and he said, "You provide the assist, I will score the goal." And and they did. And the celebrations in front of the Gallowgate end with tons of abuse being hurled at them by Newcastle fans, and Rodrigo gives it massive, and everyone's there just loving it. It's just the togetherness in this team is beautiful. It's a really lovely thing to see as a Fulham fan, because we love this club so much, and to see a squad of 20 players all who seem to be pulling in the same direction with that same love and wanting to put out performances, not just for us as fans, but for themselves as teammates, is wonderful. I don't
know if any of you follow Alex Iwobi's Instagram. I think he posts everything on Instagram and Snapchat, but you can see it in the dressing room, the way they're just a bunch of brothers all having fun, and you're seeing the complete mirroring of this in Forest as well. With Olaino, he has an Instagram account and he posts it, and the chemistry there is fantastic. And you can see these two teams that on paper shouldn't be where they are in the league are, and that is about the boost. I mean, when we came up from that championship, that complete passion and aura and the togetherness that everyone had, that first season could have been anything. We could have done that yo-yo again, but we pushed on that year, and I don't think that was anything to do with maybe added quality. Yes, Paulinho, massive, obviously, elephant in the room there, but I think that chemistry that we've got is taking us as far as we can go, and I think it will push us on even further.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see. It really is. And I think it's a beautiful way to end the first half of this episode. We'll be back with some of your questions. Welcome back to Fulhamish Podcast Part 2, following our fantastic away win at St James's Park. I'm joined by Dan, Farrell and JWP. Are you happy with JWP? I've just given you that nickname.
I've always been called it, but as long as it's not misinterpreted for James Ward-Prowse, then JW is fine. Yeah.
Okay, JW, there we go. I'm going to take questions from Instagram today, so I'm going to throw this one to you, Farrell, initially. So how do we set up to counteract Forest? This is from Fred Martin. He asked, AP in the 10, back 5 with Raul and Traore up top. What do you reckon? I will say that I thought Traore was superb yesterday. We didn't come onto it in the first half, but I thought he caused Newcastle so many issues and deserves a shout out, because he was instrumental, I think, in getting us back in that game with his just power. Like, Newcastle just didn't know how to deal with him. But yeah, so I'll repeat the question. How do we set up to counteract Forest? AP back in the 10 or a back 5 with Raul and Traore up top? How would you set up to nullify this Forest team, Farrell? Because we know that they are big on the counter. Remind me a lot of the Leicester City team that won the league, to be honest. So how would you set up to face them, do you think?
I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Fulham are a very good team on the counter and the transition as well. So it's just going to be a big sort of standoff the whole game. No, you can have the ball. No, you can have the ball. No, I insist, you have the ball. I mean, that was the case at Man United. People wanted the ball, but they kept on bloody giving it to each other. Like it was a bit of a stuttery game. But I can't say that I've watched much of Nottingham Forest this year, but I think Marco will probably not change too much. Like we talked about earlier, we didn't play too badly in the first half. Newcastle played quite well, but it was more sort of Fulham just being stronger on the tackle, being more decisive on the counter that sort of got us into it. And if Nottingham Forest are the team that are going to keep hitting on the counter attack, then we've got to catch them off guard as well in that regard. Anticipate it more, intercept a bit more. But in terms of the starting lineup, I don't think we should change it. I think ESR is definitely growing into the system a bit more. The transformation from the first half to the second half for him was unbelievable. I felt that Smith Rowe was leading the charge on the press quite a lot, and was actually winning a lot of ground duels, which is not exactly what he's known for. But I think what he can offer a bit different than AP is that if we are coming up against a team that is sitting back and being defensive, he can actually unlock a bit more, as well as the more sort of athletic side of the game, which is where probably Pereira does fit in a bit better. I just feel like we haven't got necessarily the options to change it too much. But to be honest, if we start the same team that we did yesterday, I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue. I think the only thing that we should do is basically make sure that we do what we did in the second half and just not fire crosses into the box as much. Actually get Iwobi influencing play in the middle of the park, not just out wide.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Forest this year, and I think I imagine there won't be people, but these aren't to be underestimated in any sense. Their position in the table is 100% deserved, and they're doing it in a slightly unfashionable way. It's not. At times, it is attractive football because they are superb at flooding forward. But first and foremost, they are a structurally sound football side, and this is what Nuno Espirito Santo brings. He did it with that Wolves team. Defensively, they are brilliant, and they've probably got maybe the second best centre-back pairing in the league after Van Dijk and Konate in Milenkovic and Murillo. Both of them have been brilliant this season. And they can either play a back four, they can play a back five. They've got a lovely balance. And then that electricity up top. First and foremost, you've got Morgan Gibbs-White, who I think is a fantastic footballer. He is really, really good and is at the heart of a lot of what's great about Forest. Obviously, you've got Chris Wood scoring bags of goals out of nowhere, just a completely changed player. Plus Elanga, Hudson-Odoi. There's fun, exciting players to watch in this side but are set up on the foundations of being difficult to score against. And I don't think we can try and play the same way. I think if Fulham go and try and play this game in the way that we usually would at home, if we come out of this game with 60 to 70% possession, we lose, because I think Forest will be able to deal with that and they'll hit us on the counter. And I think Farrell's right. Try and let them have the ball. This is where Fulham might find joy, is letting them have the ball, trying to drag them out a bit and then going on the counter-attack. And maybe that does involve Andreas Pereira leading a press in a way that allows them to bring it out from defence, and then you spring. Then you try and get Pereira winning the ball back on the halfway line, turning them back towards their own goal. I think it's going to be a really tricky game, but it sets us up really nicely if we can do something with it. If we beat Forest, it gets exciting again.
I mean, end of September last year, I think we played the 4-2-3-1 with Pereira and Lukic in the defensive midfield role, and that worked well. I mean, we ended up winning 1-0, didn't we? But I think, having AP in that spot. I know obviously Berger's not going to be replaced. We need them two there, but I think having AP in that role, on the 15th, I think is important. But yeah, they are a counter-attacking team. If that comes down that right-hand side, I think we need to have some assurance of what we're going to do, because we're going to find ourselves caught out again, like we did against Newcastle with Gordon. So that's, I think, Marco's biggest headache this week, is working out where that. Well, no, Wigan is probably his biggest headache to start with, but after that is going to be working out how do we not get bombarded down the right-hand side. I would like to probably see Adama use some of his strength down, defensively down the right-hand side against them, but we need him on that counter-attack as much as they're going to probably want us on the counter-attack as well. So it's going to be a headache, and I don't know how Marco's going to deal with it, but if we set up the way we did back in September, I think we'll be okay.
I anticipate it's going to be a really good game. It always is against Forest. We had the 3-2 away a couple of years ago. Paulinho, we got that flurry of goals, obviously beat them earlier in the season. And I anticipate it's going to be a fascinating game. And I just hope that, we see an end-to-end game like we did at Newcastle, rather than the Manchester United, both sides letting the other side have the ball but not really doing anything with it. But yeah, as you say, Dan, if we get a result against Forest, things do get very, very exciting. We got a question here from Chris, who asks, our away form this season has been tremendous. What can we do to replicate this at the Cottage? I can think of one idea. Maybe we stop pricing out proper home supporters in favour of tourism dollars, which will in turn generate a better atmosphere, which will then give our team a 12th man, which could potentially help with our home form. I don't know, it's just one idea. Dan, have you got any?
You're spot on with that. Yeah.
Have you got any others off the top of your head?
I think that is probably the obvious one, but the other one for me, to be boring, is that the onus is on us when we're playing at home, and I think we've played quite a few teams at home this season who have been happy to come away with a point, which forces us to try and make stuff happen. And we know that we've not been great at that this season. We've not been great at unpicking a defence that's happy to sit in, that's happy to take a 0-0 draw and potentially nick it on the counter. And when you go away from home, teams can't necessarily get away with that as much playing at home against a team like Fulham, in inverted commas. Newcastle yesterday couldn't have tried to come out of that game with a 0-0 draw. Their fans would have been disgusted by that approach, and that transcends across most of the league. Playing Fulham at home is a game that every team, in theory, should be looking to get 3 points from. That's just by nature of what we are as a team. If you want to stay in the Premier League, you need to try pinpoint a game like Fulham as a winnable game. If you're trying to win the league, likewise. So I think it plays into our hands a little bit. You go up against Newcastle, who are going to be a bit more expansive away from home, and we try and we are able to exploit that in our transitions. Whereas when we play at home, I think we've just become unstuck by teams that are happy to sit in. We saw it happen against West Ham. We saw it happen against Southampton. We need to work out how we unpick what is called a rest defence, a team that when we've got the possession of the ball, just sit back in their 2 banks of 4 or their 5 and a 4 and deal with us in front of them. Marco needs to work out how we deal with that, because the solution isn't, unfortunately, because we're great at it, swinging in 30 crosses a game. We need to find other ways of creating chances. So that would be my truthful answer, is we've got work to do at becoming a bit more creative and a bit more unpredictable.
How about turning Craven Cottage literally into a fortress and loading cannons onto the balcony? And then if a team is sitting in the box, we just fire from these cannons, like, not actual, cannonballs, because that would be brutal, but water balloons, just to upset the defense and get them out of the box. That will leave gaps for Raul and Adama to attack the box.
It would be unpredictable as well, and that's what I've just asked for.
Yeah,
I mean, another novelty suggestion that I made on Instagram during the week, and I think it sort of backs up George's point. I said, you can see how many fans are flurrying at the start of the year for these £1 pints for the early bird. I think if the club could put a noisometer sort of chart on the big screens, and if you could meet a level by half time, it's £1 pints at half time and probably for the rest of the game, that will get everyone singing, I'm sure. The problem is you'd get Alistair McIntosh and Shahid Khan putting in like sound dampeners to make, and
the lower the level, the more price that it will go up.
Yeah, I mean,
they'd probably actually what we should do is actually put on the cottage balcony. We'll swap all the directors that go up in there and whatnot. Giovanni and Infantino can go, and they can go into the hammy end, but they'll be like, "Shh, turn it down. We're trying to have a conversation about beating up kittens or going seal clubbing or something."
I think the only flaw in that sort of
clapometer
method would be the away fans being noisy enough and then them achieving our pints. But there needs to be something.
An element of competition, so like whoever's noisy, the away fans to the home fans, and then those are the supporters that get the free pints. I don't know. I feel like it needs a bit of work, but the general idea is solid.
Yeah.
We've got a question here from CJ Blancos away. I'll throw this one to you, Jordan. And it kind of carries on from a point that we've already spoken about today, but he says football is essentially a collection of moments, days, experiences, etc. Although we probably won't reach Europe, the moments we've had this season make this campaign maybe the second or third best we've had in the Premier League. Do you agree? And then he's put as a little postscript, beat Wigan, start a cup run, and it gains my number one spot. Now, I'm thinking our highest ever finish, 7th, which was the 2009 season prior to the Europa League run. That had its moments. Obviously, we beat Manchester United, we beat Liverpool, and it had some really solid ones. But I think that this season already, it's going down in history. No matter what happens between now and the end of the season, provided we don't go on an absolute horror show and end up getting relegated, which hopefully, touch wood, won't happen. But Jordan, where does this sit with you in terms of our all-time Premier League campaigns? And I'll throw this to you, Farrell, and Dan as well. Just want to hear your opinions.
It's got to be up there. It's got to be one of the top. I mean, even just that European run, I think when you sort of try to speak passionately about Fulham over the last, decade and a half or so, it's Europa League was all we could talk about, really, and that run we went on, and that Juventus game, and those are the moments that sort of live long. And obviously, you get these, Championship derby days at Wembley, and we go there, we win them, and they're great. But it is just a promotion into the Premier League. It's not, winning the Premier League. It's not a huge, huge trophy or something, but beating Brentford late on at home, I think tops that. I don't know who said it in the Telegram chat, but I think halfway through, forgive me if I say it, I believe it was George Rossiter who said it, but they said, would you trade the late Chelsea win for a European spot? I mean, the obvious answer would be probably yes, but the gremlin inside of me says absolutely not, because, that was just absolutely fantastic. Boxing Day, turkey all over the ceiling, gravy down the walls. It was absolutely fantastic win. And I think we've been spoilt this year. I think, it's got to be number one for me, probably, of recent.
I said this after the Chelsea game, something along the lines of, I was delirious and sleep deprived and whatnot from after that game. But I remember being on the podcast and I said something like, look, we know our place in the world. We're not going to get trophies all the time and all this kind of stuff. But our existence is reliant on these moments as being a Fulham fan. And there's kind of like a beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I was about to say beer holder there for a second. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. As that, like, you have to put yourself in that moment. You can't really exchange it for another person, because the Europa League run was amazing, but there might be younger Fulham fans now who are 14, 15 years old who might not necessarily see it that well because they were not even born yet or too young to even understand what's going on. And there might be some older fans who consider the 1975 Cup run as their sort of, well, that was our number one time. For me, and there's probably a lot of people around my age who've been waiting for that Chelsea away moment to happen forever, effectively, and the manner of it was just incredible. So to compare seasons and compare moments is very, very difficult. But I'd imagine all the people who are listening to the podcast right now exist in this day and age and exist this season, and I've enjoyed some unbelievable moments this year. To have both the Brentford and Chelsea moments are just absolutely incredible. And we've already had some other sort of comeback wins already as well. But yeah, the game's about moments for us, and we've had so many this year so far. And this is one of the moments, spending my Sunday evening with you guys and our listeners.
Yeah, I mean, just to add, I feel gutted because there's for the family that sit next to me in H5, because they leave always with it, about the 80th minute, 85th minute. I mean, so early on, religiously every game, and the amount of amazing things that have happened in the last dying stage of the game, they've missed every single one. So for them, they probably don't share the exact same experiences, but there's a lot of fans that probably do leave early, but don't leave a Fulham game late anymore. You can't leave.
Yeah,
I did enjoy that after Manchester United, when Diallo's goal happened, and then there was this exodus from the Johnny Haynes stand,
and then the VAR,
and then we were like, come on guys, the game hasn't ended, blah, 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 blah. And then it got VAR, and they're still all queuing up to leave the game as well.
Dan, anything to add quickly before we move on to the final question, which is a fun one to end on?
I've been saying it since that first season back in the Premier League, and actually saying it throughout the Championship season under Marco Silva. Just enjoy it. I think these are such special times, and over the past 4 years, we've had so many tremendous highs that they are totally offsetting the lows. And even last season, which we probably look back in hindsight and felt like we maybe underachieved a bit, there are still moments that make me feel like, just in general, this is probably the second best time to be a Fulham fan in my lifetime, and probably a generation beyond that as well. We are so blessed to have a squad of players who we enjoy watching, to go up and down the country watching us pick up results at grounds that we've never seen us win at, or haven't seen us win at in such a long time, that whilst it's so easy to sit here and go, oh, does this mean we're going to get Europe? Sod it. It's just fun. It's so lovely. I'm having such a great time. And for it to come after so many alternating years of misery, is to have such a prolonged period of joy, is so unusual in football. There are so few teams of our ilk that are able to string together so many seasons of happiness. So just, I'm loving it. It feels like such a pleasure to be a Fulham fan. And it feels so lovely whenever Fulham get brought up in a conversation with a non-Fulham fan, to hear them just have positive things to say about your team, because it's been so long since that was a thing.
And before we wrap up, a very fun question from the Rain Man on Instagram, who asks, which Fulhamish member has the best chance of beating Joaquin Andersen in a foot race? What do we reckon? I'm trying to think of the people that we've got in our team. I know Sammy plays football quite a lot, but I don't know whether he's particularly known for his pace. But for that matter, I don't know if there's a single member of the Fulhamish team who is known for his pace. I know I'm certainly not going to be beating Andersen in a foot race. Farrell, you play a lot of football, but from what I gather, you're more of a sort of holding role. I don't. Forgive me if I'm
holding a burger kind of role. Probably in my younger days, I maybe, but I reckon Cam Ramsey with a full rebuilt knee. I reckon the Millennium Man? $1 Million Man. That's it. The $1 Million Man. We can if we rebuilt him, he might be able to take on Andersen in a foot race.
Yeah, I'm Fulham. The Fulhamish team, obviously love them all dearly, but I don't think any of us are particularly blessed in the realm of speed. I'm just looking through the list
I would love
now.
us to I would love for us to find the quickest member of the Fulhamish team and take on Adama Traore or Anthony Robinson in a race, just to see the actual athletic difference in between Premier League quick players and the rest of us. Would you reckon Peter Rutzer is actually athletic?
Yeah, P. Rut's maybe not a bad shout, but yeah,
I do think this is a hill that I will die on. Is that football fans sometimes lose perspective of just how physically freakish all of these players are.
Yeah.
Like, because you see the comparison, you see Joachim Andersen get burnt by Anthony Gordon, you go, oh God, Andersen is so slow. No, comparatively, yes, but he is still quicker than you. like as a fact, and it's just like these comparisons are so easy to make because you just forget like the hierarchy and the grouping between like the physicality of Premier League footballers, and then the gap to the average person is just astronomically big.
Yeah, I always think that when you see sort of Sky Sports montages and there'll be some dramatic music and there'll be like really sort of super slow motion of somebody going in for a sliding tackle or taking a volley, and obviously it's just like these incredibly athletic, toned, the finest athletes on the planet. And I always think I would love to see side by side like the same treatment done to a Sunday League game, just like you see rippling bellies and sort of like people stumbling over. And I just think
a few times our Sunday League team has had the misfortune of having another our opposition turn up with a camera and put the game up on YouTube. And
oh God!
You watch like 2 or 3 minutes of it, and you look at it and go, "Oh my God, the game is so slow." It is like actually that Premier League montage in slow motion, but actually at 100% speed.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to check yourself. Keep things in perspective a little bit.
Yeah. What a depressing way to end.
I was going to say, lovely way to end.
Well, now I'm just going to look at myself in the mirror after this and think, blimey, I need to start Couch to 5K up again.
Nah, you're all good, Jordan. You're all good. Very impressive debut, my friends. I'd say that's the equivalent of getting on the score sheet and doing an off the line clearance in your debut 90 minutes. Well done, mate. Hope you enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. No, thank you, and thank you for everyone putting up listening to me.
All good. Dan Cook, pleasure as always.
Thanks, Chris. I do want to just finish. We won't go down the rabbit hole, but I do want to just say I think I'm in love with Sanderberger. He was monumental yesterday, and my performance today is in homage to Sanderberger in the middle of the park at St James's Park.
Man of the match performance. And Farrell Monk, lovely to have you on. The only thing that we have left to do is to name this podcast. What we gonna call it? There's one on the top of my mind that I would go for if I were you.
Yeah. Is it a purple snatch? Okay. I mean, I just love the fact we're actually going to call it more like Poo Castle. And
I think,
please, could someone film Sammy when he sees the name of the podcast?
Yeah, be like that Eddie Heard meme where he looks at his phone like. Oh,
I've also got to break Zoe's heart that we didn't choose her. We went with that. So
I think the lesson learned is that you have to be puerile and childish. Really.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think out of the respect that I have for that city, I think I'm going to have to be an absolute party pooper and say we can't have. As much as I would love to, I just can't do it to the good people of Newcastle. So, what's your second favourite, Faz?
Okay, I think we'll have to go to 3 points away.
3 points away, lovely stuff.
Very good, Zoe.
Very good, good.
I can now tell her that she got it, so that's it. That's good. Good turnaround. Yeah.
Right. Sammy and Co will be back on Thursday to preview our FA Cup trip up to Wigan. For all those making the trip up north, have an amazing day, and come on, let's cheer our boys on. Start a little cup run. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Add some more moments to what has already been a season riddled with them. Have a great week. Thanks for listening. Come on, you Whites.